Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I have no idea how many people are coming, but we don't have a lot of time, so I want to go ahead and get going. First of all, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. My name is Ron Van Kirk, for those of you who don't know who I am. And I serve here at the church as a business manager. And I've also, for the last 6 years, taught at our Christian school a lot of the same stuff that I'm teaching you when it comes to financial freedom. I did want to make one recommendation before we get started. This is a book that I've read numerous times. This is, I don't know what edition of this book, but this is called The Total Money Makeover. A lot of what you'll hear tonight is in this book, and it's by Dave Ramsey. It's excellent. It's a very quick read. The first time I read it in one weekend. Right? So this is a very good resource for you to get if you just want some more follow-up information on what we're going to talk about tonight. So not everything that we're talking about is in here, but most of it is. So that's just kind of caveat there. All right, so if you have your papers, let's go ahead and get started. And some introductory information that I put on there. The first thing I want to refer to is this scripture verse here. The Bible says in Proverbs 10:4, "He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich." In other words, what it's saying here is a lot of, as far as our finances go, is contingent upon what we do and the decisions that we make. Right? And so kind of along with that is this phrase here that financial stability is a spiritual matter. And oftentimes we don't look at finances that way. We gauge our lives, pretty much everything else that we do, in light of spirituality. But a lot of times finances, it's kind of set off to a side by itself, and we want to kind of exclude it from the Bible and from our Christian life. Well, that's just simply not true. And so I'm not going to take the time to go through each one of these, but the next, there's, I believe, 8 different comments that I make on the introduction here. And what the Bible has to say about finances, first of all, that God is the source. I printed the verse there for you, 2 Corinthians 9:8. Right, number 2, giving is essential. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that today, but the Bible has a lot to say about giving and being a charitable person. Not just the 10% that we owe God. That's not giving. That's owed. That would be like you saying that you are giving your money to Verizon for your cell phone bill. You're not giving them that money. That money is owed for a service they provide. Right? Tithe is the same thing. We owe God that money. As my former pastor used to say, that is God's rent payment for breathing his air. All right, and so that is owed. Beyond that, giving is essential. All right, and there's Luke 6:38, number 3. The Bible backs savings and talks about savings. Proverbs 21:20. Stay out of debt. Keep out of debt. That's a scriptural principle. Right? Proverbs 22:7. The secret of being content financially and pretty much everything else. Hebrews 13:5. A budget. That word that starts with a B that we don't want to talk about, we'll talk a lot about that tonight, is the budget. But that's a scriptural thing. Proverbs 24:3 and 4. Work hard. Usually, with this age group, that is not a problem. Most of the time, people are working very hard at their finances. They seem like they can't get ahead, right? But working hard is scriptural as well. And then, of course, lastly, seek godly counsel. And that's Proverbs 15:22. So I purposely printed the verses on the paper for you. I didn't just want to print a reference for you. I wanted to put a verse with those statements as well so that you can go back at your own time and read those. Right? So as we get started today, we're going to talk about 3 S's for our finances. And we're going to kind of start at where we kind of see ourselves right now, maybe somewhere in between there, all the way to the end, how we fix the problem. Right? So the first step there, and it should have a blank there, number 1 is to stop the bleeding. Right? Stop the bleeding. Again, I'm not trying to be unkind, but if you are struggling financially, and you have been for quite some time, I'm going to make kind of an obvious statement, you are obviously doing something wrong, right? If you're obviously doing something wrong. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. Oftentimes in our finances, we're guilty of that. And so if there's something's not right, obviously something needs to be changed. You're doing something wrong. It may not be a sin what you're doing, but something is not right financially. Secondly, the first step of this, in capital letter A, is to find the source. Find the source of the problem. What is causing this problem is the first thing. Usually the best place to find out what's causing the problem is to walk into your house, go into the bathroom, open the door, turn the light on, and look in that little square thing that's over your sink. It's called a mirror. That's usually the problem, all right, usually right there. We're oftentimes our own worst enemy when it comes to finances. We'll talk a little more about that here in a second. All right, number 1, what are some common source problems? All right, the first one there I have listed there is spending more than you make. And how is this possible in the wonderful world that we live in today? Is possible through that wonderful little piece of plastic that many of us carry around through a credit card. Right? Every time you swipe your credit card, you are borrowing money. It's not your money. Why? How do you say that? Because at the end of the month, you get a statement, you got to write a check and send it. All right? So you're spending money that you don't currently have, or you may have it in your account, but you're actually borrowing money every time you do that. I will just make this statement: the rewards are not worth it. They always say, well, hey, you can get 2% cash back, and everyone's like, wow, a whole 2%. This one only offers 1%. But then you go and look at how much you pay in interest. You just missed that payment one time during the year. All those rewards for the entire year are wiped out. If you go, we leave right now and we head down 480, get on 176, driving to downtown Cleveland. What is the tallest building in downtown Cleveland? Key. What is Key? A bank. Huntington Bank has a very large building downtown. Fifth Third Bank has a very large building downtown. You drive into Pittsburgh. Largest bank, one of the largest buildings in Pittsburgh is owned by PNC Bank. How do these banks make so much money? They make money by people borrowing that money. We have an employee of Key Bank here, so he's glad that some people do that, right? But oh, that's right. That's you work somewhere else now. That's right. But we borrow money, and that's how these banks make money. Are we mad at the banks? Of course not, right? But they know what they're doing. The credit card industry is a billions upon billions dollar industry. You're not going to beat them. They don't make as much money as they do by being beat by people like you and me. All right? So the rewards are not worth it. Secondly, buying things through financing, cars, furniture. 90 days, same as? Well, 90 days is not the same as cash. If 90 days was the same as cash, we'd all be multimillionaires because we've all lived for more than 90 days. All right? 90 days is not the same as cash. How are they able to offer that? 90 days, same as cash. You want to go down, you want to buy a new bedroom set. 90 days, same as cash. They give you free money for 90 days. How are they able to pay for that? They have to borrow that money too. How do they pay for that? They build the financing right into the cost of the furniture. It's already in there. 75 to 85% of people that do the 90 days, same as cash, do not pay it off in 90 days. They end up going on payments, and it kicks back and charges interest all the way from the beginning. All right, so 90 days, same as cash does not work. Impulse buying. Impulse buying. How many of you guys have ever heard of the company Wrigley's? Wrigley's Spearmint Gum? Seen that before? You drive out to California, there's called the Wrigley Mansion. It was one of the first huge mansions to be built in that particular town. Where it was built, it escapes me now. He was the first one to understand this concept of impulse buying, and that is right at the cash register. You bring your card up to the cash register, there's always gum right there, and we grab it, stick it on the thing. Now, impulse buying a 50-cent pack of gum, not the end of the world. But impulse buying just about everything else, which we impulse buy a lot on, is not a good thing. We get ourselves into trouble there. How many of you have ever gone to Walmart for a gallon of milk and leave after spending $50? All right? What is that called? Impulse buying. All right? It happens a lot. All right? It happens a lot. Those are some common problem sources. Emotional buying. I've had a hard day, so I deserve this. All right? Well, no, you don't, if it's not in the budget, all right? We all have hard days sometimes. We all need those things. We want to make sure they're budgeted. Your kids may be screaming for McDonald's in the back seat. Take them home and feed them peanut butter and jelly. They'll live. All right? My son loves peanut butter and jelly, all right? Unaccountable buying, right? No one is held to account for significant purchases. Right? All purchases that are major purchases, we'll talk about in a minute, should be agreed upon by your spouse, or should be, if you're single, by an accountability partner. Right? All of them should be. And we'll talk about ways to buy significant purchases as well. Number two, the second one is the old head in the sand, right? Ignorance. Right? Ignorance is the second one. Doing nothing and knowing nothing is not a solution. The credit card bill comes, we just throw it in the drawer and close the drawer, like as if it's going to escape it by putting it inside that drawer. Right? That is the head in the sand approach. Right? It does not work. Right? So common problem source is ignorance. Capital letter B, what do we need to do? Well, we need to confront the problem. We need to confront the problem. Well, here we go. It may be bad. And yes, it may be bad. You may think that it is really bad, and the reason for that is because it probably is really bad. But that doesn't change the fact that it doesn't change the fact that it has to be confronted. Right? So the first thing, what do they say? That the first step in recovery is denial. Right? We deny, then we get angry, then finally we confront the problem. Right? That's what we have to do. We have to confront it head on. Right? Lay all your bills out and prioritize them. Prioritize them. For example, I'll list off 3 bills. You tell me which one's the most priority. You've got the cable bill, you've got the mortgage bill, and you've got the Verizon bill. Which one is the priority? The mortgage bill. All right? Why? you got to have a place to live, right? There's something called the four walls, all right? You have to have shelter, you have to have transportation, you have to have clothing, and you have to have food. Other than that, everything else honestly doesn't matter. You have to have those four things. So if it's a choice between paying the electric bill and paying the credit card bill, what are we going to do? We're going to pay the electric bill. Why? Because that has to be a priority. And that's what I talk about by having priorities. Hey guys, if you just grab that paper right there on your way, and that'll help you. All right? Food, shelter, transportation, utilities, those are always a priority. Then we're going to prioritize the other bills from smallest to largest, and we'll talk about that here in a second. All right? And that is called the debt snowball. And that actually is a phrase that comes from this book right here. And by the debt snowball, which means you're going to lay out all of your debts from smallest to largest, you're going to pay the smallest one off first, and after that one's paid off, you're going to take that payment and roll it into the minimum payment of the other one. Then after that one's paid off, you're going to take that payment, roll it in the minimum payment of the other one. And it's just going to keep rolling and rolling and rolling. And the average American that does this can pay off their credit cards between 7 months, was it 7 and 18 months, they can have that paid off. Some of you are nodding your head because you've probably done it before, right? It does work, right? But you have to prioritize those things, right? So start the debt snowball, right? Letter C, bandage the wound, right? Right now we have a gaping wound. What are we going to do? We're going to bandage the wound. How do we do that? Number one, stop spending money you don't have, right? Stop spending money you don't have. And only in the United States of America and other first world countries is that possible. Most places in the world and prior to 1950 in the United States, if you didn't have cash for it, you didn't get it. The credit card industry, it seems like they've been around forever. In the broad scheme of history, it's a very new concept. The first credit card was introduced, it was the Diners Club card in New York City. It was introduced in the mid-1950s. Right? So credit cards have only been around for, 70 years? They've not been around that long. Most of you probably have a relative that's older than the credit cards are, still alive today. Right? So stop spending money you don't have. Number two, well, Brother Ron, what about if we have an emergency? Well, let me tell you something. You're going to have an emergency. Why? Because life happens. Right? Well, how do we account for that? That's why we put that credit card in our wallet to begin with. Then all of a sudden, McDonald's is an emergency after about 6 months of that, which is really weird how that works. Right? The credit card companies know that. Right? Well, you establish an emergency fund, meaning you set aside $1,000 in an account that you don't touch unless it's an emergency. Is McDonald's after a day at work an emergency? No. Driving down the highway and your wheel falls off your car? That's an emergency. All right? You get the idea. Then once you pay for that wheel back on the car, you then fill that emergency fund back up again so you're able to have that $1,000. After you have the $1,000, and make sure you do this first before you do this, otherwise bad things could happen, cut up the credit cards. Now, don't cut them up before you have the emergency fund, because like Brother Ron said, to cut up the credit cards, you go home and you just have like a plastectomy, as Dave Ramsey calls it, and you start cutting up all these credit cards, you have no money in the bank, and you're driving down the highway and the wheel falls off, all right? Well, now you really have a problem because you don't even have the credit card to pay for it, all right? So make sure that you have that $1,000 first, then we cut up the credit cards. My wife and I have lived for the last 8+ years without credit cards. We don't have any in our name whatsoever. We spend everything with cash. We do have a debit card that we use to pay for gas, and that's it. And we're still breathing. We're still able to walk down the street, right? We can still rent cars. We can still rent hotel rooms. We can still do whatever you can do with a credit card, you can do with a debit card. The credit card companies will try to tell you can't. That is a lie, 100%, right? If you notice on your debit card, it'll either say Visa or MasterCard. If you use that debit card as a credit card, it comes with the same protection that all credit card transactions come from. About 7 years ago, I had my debit card stolen, and some guy had a lot of fun getting car repairs. For a whole day, I didn't realize it was gone, for a whole day, and he spent something like $800-900 out of my bank account because it was a debit card. I simply called the bank, called MasterCard, said charges 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all fraud. Within 48 hours, the money was back in my account. Right? So you don't need credit cards. They are not necessary. They are not necessarily part of life. Again, I'm living proof of it. Over 8 years now, we have not had them. All right, so cut those up. Then number 4, and probably the biggest one, is you have to learn to say no. You have to learn to say no. Both to your kids sometimes and to yourself. You have to learn to say no, right? That's going to do, number one, is going to stop the bleeding. If we can get to this part, we're no longer digging the hole, right? The hole is now, we're now at the bottom, okay? So now how do we start getting ourselves out of that hole, right? And that's number two. Number two is to start the budget, right? Start the budget. Zig Ziglar said this, he's a well-known author, if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time. You have to have a plan. If you were going to build a house, you would not just go in and start pouring cement in the ground, throw up a couple boards, slap a roof on it, and put a front door on it. You're like, well, that's ridiculous. But that's oftentimes what we do with our finances. Our paycheck comes in and it's gone before we don't even know where it went. Right? So we have to start a budget. You have to have a plan or you will fail. Failure is often a result of a lack of planning. That is true in just about everything. I, this year, am teaching 4 classes at our Christian school this year. It's the most that I've ever taught. I'm a little bit nervous about it. But I took a lot of time this summer, and I had laid out all my lesson plans for the entire year. Right? Why? Not because I want to be like the uber nerd teacher, but because I know I have to have a plan. And if I don't have a plan, I will fail. And if I fail, that means students don't learn. And so the same thing is true with finances. If you don't have a plan with where your money is going to go, you will fail. You will run out of money and you won't be able to live throughout the rest of the month. You've often heard us say there's more month than there is money, and that happens a lot of times. We want to flip that. We want to say, well, there's more money than there is month. We want to be able to flip that. Oftentimes that's the case with money. I've counseled numerous people one-on-one, and I would have to say that more than 75% of the time that I've counseled people about finances, it's not a fact that they don't have enough income. It's a fact that they don't even know where that income went. They don't even know where it's going half the time. They make enough money, but because they don't have a plan, it goes bye-bye. And they don't oftentimes know where it is, right? So you have to start a budget, all right? Capital letter A, you have to account for every single dollar. For the most part, we know what our paycheck is going to be. And at this stage in the game, for the most part, people are salary, or if they're paid hourly, it's the same amount hourly every week. So you have a very good idea whether you get paid once a week, twice a month, once a month, whatever. You have a very good idea of how much money is coming in. You're going to want to spend that money on paper before it comes in. And that's something called doing a zero-based budget. Again, Dave Ramsey talks a lot about this. Does anyone want to take a stab at what a zero-based budget is? Okay, we'll do a real quick, yeah.
So every dollar that you have in your paycheck, it pretty much is allocated to $0.
It's exactly right. Let's just use a hypothetical. Your paycheck is your net. Now, do it off of your net, because if you do it off your gross, you won't account for taxes, right? So you do it off your net. So let's say that your net paycheck is $2,000. So you start at the top of your budget, $2,000. Then you spend, I use the word spend, $2,000 on that piece of paper until at the bottom you have zero. So the first thing you're going to start off with is tithe, 10%, $200. Right? Then the next thing you want to do is savings, and we'll talk about this in a second. You want to save every single time that you bring money in. We'll talk about that more in a second. Then you have mortgage, utility bills, food, soccer pictures, whatever, and you budget that all the way down. So at the bottom, if you have $300 left over, you didn't do, hey, good job. It means you didn't do something right. Right? Go back and allocate that money, and at the end, you should have zero. That's called a zero-based budget. So say that you get paid on Friday, you should have this done by the latest Thursday. So when that money comes in, you're able to do that. It's recommended that you do it every month. So if you get paid twice a month, you would start off with $4,000. And some of the forms divided up between 2 pays. You can find them online at Dave Ramsey's website. They're free. All right, you can try those out. And zero-based budget. Now, when you do that, you will not get it right the first time. You will not get it right the second time. You probably won't even get it right the third time. But it's just like anything else. As you practice it, the better you will get at it. And it takes between 3 to 4 months to really get that down to where you know everything. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get in the first month, and you're going to get a bill for the internet. You're going to be like, I forgot about that. Right? So then you have to go back to your budget with your spouse. You can't make changes by yourself. That's cheating. Right? Go back with the budget with your spouse, and you change that. So say the internet bill was $40. You have to take $40 from somewhere else because you can't go in the negatives. So you take $40 away from going out to eat that month or whatever. And so you adjust that. Then by the time you do that 2, 3, 4 times, you'll have that down to the point now where my wife and I, our budget meetings last about 30 seconds because it's the same thing every month. Doesn't really change a whole lot, right? But in the beginning, it took some time to get that down, right? So complete that zero-based budget and make sure you double check it for accuracy, right? You don't want to have mathematical errors when it comes to paying your bills. All right, so A, account for every dollar. All right, I know I'm talking quickly, but I want to get through all this. Cap letter B, all right, how many of you in here hate talking about finances? It just drives you out of your mind. You would rather crawl under the table and not talk about it, all right? When it comes to the budget, everyone is included in the budget process. You have to get together with your spouse or with your accountability partner, and you have to be involved in the budget process. My wife is like those of you that raise their hand, right? She doesn't want anything to do with it. I handle all the bills. She just wants me to be able to give her the cash for whatever it is, and she does a great job shopping with that money, but she doesn't want to be involved in the intricacies of it. Well, she had to be at the beginning, and we agreed on this, and now we move forward. So much so that we've really become nerds when it comes to finances. The other day, we have a 3-year-old son. He used his first seat for as long as he possibly could, but he was looking ridiculous in that first car seat. And so we had to buy another car seat. Well, she found one for $25, and she called me and said, hey, is it okay if I buy this car seat for $25? And people say, well, that's stupid. No, that's accountability. And of course it was fine. We had set aside money for that several months ago, and so she bought it. Again, it's not a big deal, but that's the kind of communication that you want to have with your accountability partner. And I don't want you to raise your hand, but how many times have people gotten the Visa bill and whoever's responsible for balancing that and paying it looks at them like, who bought this? Why'd you buy that? Who bought this? That all goes away when everyone is involved in the budget process. The divorce rate in America is over 50%, United States. Of those marriages, over 50% of those marriages that fail is because of money problems, right? So it is a big deal, and you need to be involved in the budget process. If you do this together, and you come to the end of the month and you miss something, there's no pointing fingers. You're both involved with it, right? If you're a single person, get an accountability partner with you, right? Obviously it's not going to be your spouse, but find an accountability partner to do this with you. Right, cap letter C, something that is huge for us in our lives is use cash to pay for items. It is a little bit inconvenient. I'll just put that out there. People don't want to use cash because it's not convenient. Well, being in debt is not convenient either. All right, so use cash to pay for items. The way that we do it in our family is we use the envelopes. We have a food envelope. We have an entertainment envelope. We have a clothing envelope. We have a gift envelope. We have envelopes for all these different things. Every time I get paid, my wife goes to the bank, takes out the exact same amount for all those things added up, and she distributes them into each of those envelopes. And then when that envelope is gone, guess what? We don't buy anymore whatever's in that envelope. Right now, if it's, if the food envelope's empty and it has to go till the end of August, and today's August the 16th, right? We have a problem. Your kids are going to starve, right? So you have to go back and change your budget, again, with your accountability partner, and adjust that, right? So you need to do those things. The gift envelope is great because every year we're always surprised when what shows up at December 25th? Christmas. And that's where a lot of people get into debt. Like, we're shocked that Christmas is here again this year, that we didn't know that was coming. It comes every year, right? So set aside money every single month for Christmas. And you know what will happen? And this was kind of a side benefit that we saw. My wife goes Christmas shopping all year long. She has that gift money with her. This store is having a huge sale, a closeout sale on whatever is going out of style, or not out of style, but out of season. Not out of style. If it's out of style, my son can wear it. I don't care. All right, but out of season, and she'll buy that. Because why? It's discounted heavily. And most people wait till Christmas and they pay top dollar for stuff. Those sales at Christmas time, please. They don't have sales at Christmas time. They know you're going to spend your money. They may slap a sign up, but that's not a sale. All right, so make sure that you do that. It has those side benefits as well. All right, cap letter D, use automatic withdrawals. And this is very convenient when it comes to like utility bills, insurance bills. I don't write any checks anymore for my bills. It's all automatically withdrawn every month. I still get the bill, but it's all automatically withdrawn. Well, that avoids two things. One, it avoids you missing a payment, right? Because that happens sometimes. And number two, it keeps it very clean and orderly for doing your budget purposes. For example, the illuminating company. You can go online if you have an account with the illuminating company, and you can log in, and they will show you your last years of statements right there. And you can budget, okay? It's September next month. What did I pay last September for electricity? You can budget that way. So it's very convenient. So we're not against technology and modern conveniences. We just want to make sure that they are to our benefit and not to someone else's benefit. All right, so use automatic withdrawals. Save in every monthly budget. Make sure a line item in every single one of your budgets is savings. For a time when you're trying to get out of debt, it may only be $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever. But savings should be there. That will get you in the habit of saving money, right? And you'll want to watch that grow. My recommendation is when you're doing the zero-based budget, when you get to the bottom, if there's money left over, don't blow that at kiddie park. Put that up into your savings. Or if you're in debt, trying to pay for debt, dump that on your debt snowball, all right? So use that money wisely, all right? This is a really cool app that I have. I don't use it quite as much anymore, but when we were first starting it, we did. This is, it's called Every Dollar, and this is actually by Dave Ramsey. It's free, and it's available on both the Android and the iPhone operating systems. Phones, it's free. It'll help you with budgeting and all that kind of stuff. There's a ton of information on there, and it is a free app, so I would recommend looking at that. All right, so number 1 was stop the bleeding. Number 2, start the budget. All right, then the last thing is now we've got to stay within the boundaries. Once we start our budget, now we have to stay within the boundaries. You can make the best budget in the world. You can have a beautiful spreadsheet. You can frame it and hang it on your wall. But if you don't follow it, it doesn't matter. You have to follow the budget. And this is where a lot of times people fall off the wagon. They are gung-ho. It's like the New Year's resolutions and working out. They're all gung-ho at the beginning of the year, and by February, they're eating ice cream at midnight. All right? A lot of times with the budget, that's what happens. We get all excited about it, we do it, and then we don't follow it. You have to follow it. If you don't, it's just paper and ink. All right, so follow the budget. Number 2, do not violate the budget boundaries. Do not go outside those boundaries that you set for yourself and that your spouse set with you or your accountability partner set with you. Don't go outside of that. Even if it's in the budget, if you're going to make a significant purchase, all right, there's an example here is a boat. But a significant purchase is really by definition anything over $300 to $500 is a significant purchase. Some of you may say, a significant purchase for me is anything over $20. Right? Well, whatever it is in your life. I have an uncle who owns a multi-million-dollar home in Cranberry. He owns a house on the beaches of the Outer Banks, and he owns a condo in Naples. A $300 purchase is not a significant purchase for him. Right? He would be like, $300, what is that? Right? He's a multi-millionaire. But we're all different. So whatever that significant purchase is, you have to set whatever that is. If you're going to make the significant purchase, there are 5 things you want to do, and I don't know if I listed them there or not, but number 1 is to wait overnight. Wait overnight. What does that take out? The emotion. You don't want to be emotionally tied to anything. Right? You should be emotionally tied to your kids and to your spouse, but you should not be emotionally tied to an object. And oftentimes when we see that, those emotions, the endorphins in our mind, get released. It's like, I want to buy that now, right? Wait overnight. Oftentimes you go home, you sleep, you wake up in the next morning, what was I thinking? But if you buy that, you have something called buyer's remorse the next morning. And oftentimes you go to return it. Sorry, you can't, all right? So wait overnight. Number 2, carefully consider your buying motives. Is this a want or is this a need? Right? Is food a want or a need? Need. Is going to Chipotle a want or a need? It is a want. It is a want. All right? There's a huge difference. Every time you walk into Chipotle and pay $8 for rice and a tortilla shell, all right, you could go home and make that same thing for about $1. All right? So it is a want. Now, is there anything wrong with going to Chipotle? No. But we have to differentiate between what is a want and what is a need. When it comes to a significant purchase, is this a want or a need? Now, is there anything wrong with buying wants? Of course not. But you need to make sure that you have a proper buying motive, that you have the money to pay cash for that item. Right? Number 3, don't buy anything you don't understand. This particularly falls into place when it comes to investing. A lot of times you have people who are very slick talkers, and you'll just invest in something and you lose your shirt over it. Right? Don't do that. If you're going to invest, and you should invest at some point in this process, you should invest with someone who has the heart of a teacher, not someone who sees how many 6-syllable words they can use when they're talking to you. All right? So don't buy something you don't understand. Consider the opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? Well, the opportunity cost is this. If I pay $25 for this, I will lose the opportunity to pay $25 for this. You have to consider the opportunity cost of buying those things. If I spend this $25 for my family at McDonald's, I will not have the $25 to buy school supplies for my child. Right? That's called opportunity cost. So you have to weigh that every time you make, in this case, we're talking about significant purchases. Then lastly, and I put it in big bold, communicate with your spouse or your accountability partner. Communicate, communicate, communicate. One real quick story, and I have another uncle. I have two uncles who are multimillionaires. The second uncle bought his wife a brand new Mercedes convertible for Christmas one year, right? And she got it, and she's like, because she was kind of upset because he didn't communicate with her. And she liked Lexus instead. Now, she's not a snob. She's not a snob at all right? But that communication wasn't there, and so it actually sat in their garage, and I actually drove it for 2 weeks when they were on vacation, all right? But you need to communicate with your spouse when you make those significant purchases, okay? All right, number 2, extra budget items should be rare. Again, this is after the 2 or 3, 4 months it takes to get it down. The extra items should be rare. All right, moving on. Capital letter C. Capital letter C. All right, I think I have, if it's not in the budget, you want it in the budget, put it in the budget. Is that what's in your sheet? Okay. Yeah, if it's not in the budget, you want it in the budget, put it in the budget. This says adjust the budget each month, and that's going to happen. Who's in charge of the budget? You are. So if you get to the end of the month, like, I didn't have enough money for lunches. Well, put the money in there for lunches, right? Adjust the budget. You get to decide. It's because it's there. It's not like the 10 Commandments etched in stone, all right? You can change it. It's your budget with your spouse or accountability partner, all right? So letter D. Okay, Brother Ron, I got the budget down, but we're still short, and that may be. So let's talk about some ways that we can either increase our income or lower our expenses. Okay, and that's the only 2 ways that you can have more money, is if you bring more money in your income or you cut your expenses. We're not the federal government. We can't deficit spend until $19 trillion. All right? And we can't deficit spend at all anymore because we cut up our credit cards. So they're no longer in play. All right? So number 1, get a part-time job. All right? Now, for many of you in here, you're already working Uber hours. And I understand that. But there may be some who can get a part-time job. For a real quick personal example, back probably 10, 12 years ago when we first got married, I worked an 8 to 5 job. I asked if I could move my hours from 6 to 3, and I worked a second job from about 5 till about 2 o'clock in the morning just to make some extra money. Now, I was tired all the time, right, for a while, but I did that for about 6 months to save up money for something that we were trying to buy. And so you get a part-time job. It doesn't have to be permanent. It could be till you pay off all your credit cards, or it could be till you pay off your car, or it could be till whatever, right? You pay off your students' tuition at school, whatever, right? Get a part-time job. Number 2. Uh-oh. Now we're treading on some very thin ice here, right? How many Starbucks fans in here? All right, Dunkin' Donuts? All right, Dunkin' Donuts. Some other coffee place, Tim Hortons. It's rumored, I'm the council president here in Brooklyn, it's rumored that Tim Hortons is coming to Brooklyn, all right, possibly. All right, well, I hate to do this to you, but sorry, all right? Cut that out. Starbucks, as Dave Ramsey called it, should be renamed $5, all right, is what it should be called. Make your coffee at home. It's so much cheaper making it at home. But it doesn't taste as good. Then drink something else. Water's better for you anyways. All right? Cut that out. Think about that. $5 a day times 30 days in a month, that's $150 a month. And most people will buy coffee every single day. Every single day. Our kids come into school carrying, it blows my mind how these kids have this money for these things. But they do. Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, get rid of that. All right, how about number 3 here? Like, pack your lunch. Right? I know Chipotle has really cool atmosphere inside their store. All right, but you can pack your lunch for a 16th of the price. All right, so pack your lunch. All right, number 4, turn down the heat, turn down the AC in your house. Right? Or how about shut the AC off? Now, this isn't as prevalent today because electric prices have come down so much. All right, but turn down your utilities. I put a couple ones in there. Cut the cable. You don't need to have cable television. There's nothing on but garbage anyways. Say, but I watch the news. Why? You're just going to be depressed. All right? Cut the cable. Right? Here's a big one. Cut the cell phone. I can't. We only lived for the first 10,000 years on this world without cell phones, but now that we have them, we have to have them. No, you don't. All right? You don't have to have them. Say, well, I have to have it, otherwise I can't communicate with my spouse. Okay, get a dumb phone. You don't have to have a smartphone. Right? Now, I'm not saying you should. I have a smartphone. I'm not saying you shouldn't live without a smartphone. But if it comes between a smartphone and paying off your credit card bills, get rid of the cell phone. Right? You don't have to have the cell phone. Cut the internet. I have to have internet. No, you don't. Again, wants, needs, wants, needs. Is it nice to have internet? Yes. Is it a need? No. Because again, for all the previous generations before this generation, we survived without it, right? So it's not a need. Again, wants, needs. Now, some people work at home. They have to have the internet. That is a need, right? Oftentimes your company will help you pay for that, or they'll give you money for it, right? So difference between wants and needs. Again, I'm not saying you should cut any of these out. They're just things that ways that you could look at, right? Here's a big one, and no one's going to like this one, but that's okay. Right, sell the car. Car payments are not a way of life. You do not have to have a car payment. You say, yes, yes, you do. No, you don't. Again, my wife and I have lived for 10 plus years with no car payments, and we both drive cars. So I don't walk everywhere, although I should walk to work. It's less than a half a mile from here, right? But I don't, right? Well, how do you do this? You save up and you pay cash. You don't have to have a new car. For example, I just bought my wife a new car to us. It was a 2007 Saturn Vue. It's a nice car, gets us from point A to point B. It's a 10-year-old vehicle. But you know what? It's a nice vehicle with no payments. The average car payment in the United States of America today is $454 a month. So you see a new car driving down the road, it's hauling behind it a $454 payment with it every single month. Do the actuarial tables on that. Take 454 times 12 times 60, or no, times 5. 5 years. Now you're even saying them extended out into 72 and 84 months, right? Why do they keep spreading those out? Because the monthly payment goes down? No, because they're making more money, right? Again, are we mad at the car companies? No, I'm glad they keep selling new cars because that way I can buy used cars, right, later on down the road, right? Sell the car. Now, many families have 2 cars. We have to have 2 cars. Wants, needs. You may not. I don't know. But if you're in debt and you've got 2 car payments, you don't need that second car, right? You can sell the car, buy a beater, right? I have an app on my phone called OfferUp. And I was helping a couple of the teenage guys look for cars, and their budget limit was $1,000. And you'd be amazed at what you can buy for $1,000. Now, it's not going to be a Mercedes. It's not even going to be a 07 Saturn Vue. But you're going to be able to buy a vehicle that you can get from point A to point B with that doesn't come with car payments. Think about cutting out $454 a month out of your budget going to the car company. All right, so think about that. All right, so sell the car. All right, here we go. Common mistakes. All right, here we go. You guys all seen these memes before. You had one job, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to paint fire and it says fry. All right, there they had the McDonald's bag. It says ice and they filled it with popcorn. All right, you have one job when it comes to finances to make sure that your family is financially stable. All right, here are some common mistakes. Number 1, your budget is unrealistic. We're only going to eat every other day, and we're going to shut all the lights off and shut the power off to our house for the next 3 months. Right? That's not realistic. That's not going to happen. All right, so make sure that your budget is realistic. Number 2, both spouses are not on board, and this is a big one. That you may be on board or your spouse may be on board, but you're both not on board. If that's the case, you're like oil and water. It's not going to mix. You have to both be on board. Right? If your spouse is used to eating out 3 times a week, and you're saying we're cutting that out, that could be a problem. Right? You both have to be on board and explain why. All right, number 3, debit card, debit card, debit card. I know people who don't have any credit cards, but they $20 themselves to death. Meaning they go to the ATM, take out $20. Go to the ATM, take out $20. Go to the ATM, take out $20. Why? Right? The debit card can be just as dangerous as the credit card if you don't monitor it. Again, we're going to use cash to pay for purchases. We do use a debit card to pay for fuel only because it's a little bit more convenient. Because we usually get our fuel at Sam's Club. It's the cheapest around usually. You can't pay for cash there. They only have the little machine. The guy in that little booth doesn't even know what he's doing in there. All right, so, but you don't want to debit card yourself either, right? Number 4, we fail, so we quit. We mess up 1 month. We've had a long day at work. We should go home and make dinner, but we go and we swipe the debit card and we paid $20 for dinner at a restaurant. Well, there's the budget for the month, so we just throw it away. Right? Don't do that. The Bible says a just man falleth 7 times and does what? Rise up again. Right? You're gonna mess up. In the years that we've done it, we've messed up right before. But don't quit. Number 5, car payments. We already talked about this. Get rid of the car. Get rid of the car. Car payments. Number 6, we keep that one credit card. There have been studies that have been done on this. Why do you think it is that when your kid, how many of you have a kid that's 18 years old or older, right? All right, 18 years old, all right? How many guys remember that when they right around they turned 18, they started getting credit card offers in the mail, like by the handfuls. Why? Well, first of all, the adult market is saturated. But beyond that, they know, studies have proven that they know that if they can become the first credit card that they sign up for, they keep it. It's almost like an ex-girlfriend's number. You hold on to it just in case something doesn't work out. All right? They will hold on to that credit card, and they'll keep it forever. And so these credit card companies know that. So they always hold on to that one credit card. All right, get rid of all of them. You don't need it. Number 7, I can be irresponsible, and God will just take care of me. Now, this one hits kind of close to home, but it is true. Will God take care of us if we do what we're supposed to do? He will. Right? But being irresponsible with our finances, God cannot bless that. Right? He talks all through Scripture about finances. I just gave you 8 or 9 references that talks about that. Right? We cannot be irresponsible with our finances. God will take care of us to the extent that He can. But the Bible tells us here in James 4:17, therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. And we often think about this as far as how we live our day-to-day lives, as far as morally our conduct, but it's no different when it comes to our finances. So plug in finances to this. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good with our money, with what God has given to us, it all belongs to him anyways. And doeth it not, the Bible calls that sin. So when we think of it as a spiritual aspect, which is what I'm trying to get across to you, is that it really changes everything. We wouldn't just live our whatever life outside of God when it comes to our spiritual life at church. We wouldn't raise our kids that way. But oftentimes when it comes to finances, we do. All right? So make sure that you are following scriptural principles. Right? So kind of in review, number 1, stop the bleeding. Stop spending money that you don't have. Right? Number 2, start the budget. Get a realistic plan and work it. Work that plan. All right? Number 3, stay within the boundaries. Stay within the boundaries. Refuse to quit. Right? Refuse to quit. It will not be easy to start off with. And that is many times is why people quit. Because it's not easy. Right? But refuse to quit. And I promise you that if you stick with this and you do this and you follow these plans, you get help. I just gave you a real good source right here. This guy wrote the book, literally, on finances. He's a Christian. He's a very godly man. He has a radio. He's on the radio every single day. I think he's in Akron here. You can also get his podcast online. I listen to it quite often. And he's mean to people when they call in. And sometimes, I've been very kind today, but sometimes people need to have people be mean to us when it comes to this stuff. He has people call in all the time and he just rips their face off for having car payments. Now, I didn't do that tonight, all right? But oftentimes they deserve it because of what's going on. And he also has people, how many of you have listened to his show before, all right? What's the funnest part of the show? The debt-free screams, all right? He'll have people either call in or oftentimes he has people visit his studio and they'll have paid off $70, $80, $90, $100,000 in student loans and all kinds of stuff, and they're completely debt-free. And so he lets them scream as loud as they can on the radio, we're debt-free. And it's really cool to listen to. And my wife and I will make that call one of these days when our house is paid off. All right, well, we're debt-free, hopefully soon. And so it can be done. And you can do it, but it has to be a conscious decision that you make. And you have to sit down and you have to face things. Some of you are in different positions than others. Some of you have no debt, and you're trying to save for the future and to invest. Some of you are buried in debt, and you're just trying to make it through tomorrow. And we're all in different situations, but the Bible has the path for us to follow, but we have to make the choice. Just like anything else in life, we have to make the choice.